Avril, Elizabeth, Anne, Greco. I was born in London on August 17, 1937. My mother's name is Mona Tanner. Her maiden name was Mona Green. My father is William Tanner, and my mother was a homemaker, and my father was an engineer. But he was also full-time in the British Army. I have one brother and one sister. His name is Jack. Her name is Molly. I have a deceased brother. His name was Bill. Both of them live in the county of Kent in southern England, just south of London. Yes, we keep in touch, usually on the telephone or by Skype. I lived in London with my mother. My father was away in the professional army. And when World War II broke out in 1939, we were doing fine until 1941, when London was bombed. Ripe old age of 4 years old, I was taking care of my sister, who was a year and 4 months. It was really difficult. It was one of the defining moments, I think, of my life. I can still remember it. The children in London had to be evacuated out of London. Luckily for us, we had our grandparents who lived in Cornwall, which is southwest part of England. My mother put us on a train in charge of the guard to Cornwall, 365 miles away. We stayed there until 1945, the end of the war, and we had a wonderful childhood down there. It was a great place to be, especially since you came from a city that was in chaos and didn't have anything to a beautiful countryside to wander and not get in trouble. I wanted to be a missionary, and that stayed with me, I think, through my high school, grammar school years, when I decided, no, I want to be an airline stewardess and travel the world. And then I had that bug in my bonnet to travel the world. Of course, I found out that I couldn't be a stewardess because you had to be 21 years old. I got out of school. I decided to come to start my world travel. Teenage girls, we all went out together. As it turned out, I was the only one that left at that time. It was when I was 14. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell fibs on this thing, but anyway, I went to Woolworths. Wow. And that was my first job. I was very excited. I thought, oh, good, I'm going to work in the card department and help people get birthday cards and Christmas cards and all of that. I was very thrilled. And they asked me when they interviewed how old was I, and I told them I was 16. I was 14. They put me to work in the nuts and bolts department. There were like 5 million different kinds of nuts and bolts, and I didn't know what. And people coming in asking for them, and I didn't know what one bolt from the other. So it was kind of a learning experience there. When I got out of school, I worked for the government. At that time, it was called the GPO, and basically it was in the accounting department of the telephone company, which it was run by the government over there. I enjoyed that for a while. I was moving up a little bit. I was doing well. And I asked when could I get my next promotion. And they told me when I was 23. I think I was 17 and a half. I said, oh, that's it. I can't stay here till I'm 23. I'm going to have to just move on. And that's when we started talking about going to see the world. I was, I think, 17 when I decided to leave England. Okay, the way for me to get the start on our travels, for all of us girls we talked about, was to go to Canada first. Because at that time, Canada was a new country. It was a colony of England, and they were looking for young people to immigrate there. And we went to the Canadian Embassy, all of us. They said they would pay half of our fare on the boat to go across the Atlantic. When the time came, I went out, got a second job in a theatre, and I put all that money away to save for the rest of my fares and to come over and start a new life. I saved up £40, £40, which is about $60, I should be correct. As the time went on, the girls all found they couldn't go that year, and the last boat to leave England for the winter, because of icebergs, was in October. And so I said, well, I'm going anyway. I booked my fare and got on this boat and crossed the Atlantic. On the last crossing, it was to Quebec. I couldn't go all the way down to Montreal or down the Salon Seaway. It was frozen. I got out of Quebec and got the night train to Toronto. Quite a way, arrived the next morning, you know. The reason I headed for Toronto is because it was an English settled city. It was mostly English people there. Thought that'd be better than the French speaking, which I wasn't very good at speaking French. It's because I was just an adventurous kind of person. I wanted to do everything, see the world, and I really couldn't do it there. We were going to do it as a group. I wasn't a bit scared. My mother always brought us up to say that if you have your health, you have everything. And I was very healthy, and I was willing to do any jobs and learn fast. Got to Toronto, and that's when I got my awakening. Before I left England, I had called the YWCA to see if I could stay there till I got myself situated. And they said they didn't take reservations. So come, and if they had a room, I could stay. So I went there, and they had no rooms. And the woman, and there I was standing there with this huge trunk with no room. And the woman said to me, well, there is another young lady. We'll ask you if you could share her room for tonight, and we'll see what can be done tomorrow. So that's what I did. I went to the British Embassy, told them what happened, and I had nowhere to stay, and I was looking for a job. They got me an interview with the Royal Bank of Canada, because I had worked in government office. I went there, got the job, only had this $60, and probably a little less by then. Started the following Monday, and was told I was going to get paid every 2 weeks, which I figured, oh, could my money last 2 weeks? Found out then that at the end of 2 weeks, they held the first 2 weeks' pay. I didn't get paid for 4 weeks. I went hungry for a few days and I didn't have any food. Before that time, I had moved from the Y, and the British Embassy had hooked me up with a young couple who had a little child who took in young immigrant people temporarily to stay at their home. We paid a little bit of rent to them, and I had a room there, and they gave me, I think, 2 or 3 meals. I didn't have any money. They felt sorry for me, I think. I mean, I didn't cry the blues, it's just a fact.
Right.
You know, I went into a small apartment with another immigrant girl we shared. I loved Canada. I loved working at the bank, the Royal Bank of Canada. There was a lot of young people working there. Some of them were newcomers to Canada, some were Canadians. And I just loved working in there. It was a lot of fun and enjoyed it. And in the meantime, I was riding back and forth to my future husband. Yeah. I did find that when I left, I was very emotional. I didn't think I would be because I was so excited.
Right.
That I didn't think, I was emotional thinking, everybody seemed more worried about it than I did. I started thinking about how I should be worried, maybe. And I got emotional. Next teller was a blonde girl. Every Friday, people would come in with their paychecks to cash them, of course. And she had a line out the door of men. Well, lining up because they all liked her. She was a blonde bombshell, right? We used to laugh about it. And she was really nice. I got to be good friends with her. We had to balance our money. In those days, I don't think they do it now, but when you worked in the bank, if you lost money, you had to pay it back. They took it out of your paycheck. Right. She owed about $700, and we were making about $40 a week.
Oh my gosh.
And so they were taking a little out of her paycheck every week. It was a big joke. I was leaving my family. The most difficult thing arriving was the initial getting settled. I didn't realize, I didn't even think about it, that I didn't have any place to stay, or I didn't have a job, or I didn't have much money.
Right.
I never worried about anything when I was 19. I thought, I can do it. But my mother did tell me before I left England that, Avril, we're letting you go because you really want to go. We're not stopping you. But if you ever get into any trouble or you want to come back to England, we can't send you the money. We don't have that kind of money to send to you to come back. So think about what you're doing. So I knew I couldn't go back. I had to go forward. And that was it. All right, during World War II, and we lived next door to a dairy where they delivered milk really early in the morning to everybody's homes. My father was away at the war, and my mother was working in an arms factory, manufacturing arms for the war effort. What she used to do in the evening, put my sister and I in a bed down on the first floor of our house, our apartment, and I slept at one end, my sister slept at the other end. There was a door, naturally, to get into the room. What happened that night, we were sleeping, a bomb dropped. Not on our house, but across the street. But because it was such a large bomb, it destroyed our house too. And it blew in all the windows and doors and the floors up. If you looked at pictures of bomb sites, that's what it looked like, the bomb site. The ceiling, you could see the sky. When it happened, evidently the door blew off to the room and blew over the bed and covered me. I was buried under the door and all the bricks of the house fell on top of the door. It really saved me from those bricks. But I couldn't move, I couldn't get out. I was just buried there. I could hear was my sister screaming. So I started screaming. But the dairy people in the dairy next door working, they knew what had happened because it happened to them too. And they came over and dug us out of there. I looked at my sister. She was covered in blood. The only reason is that the glass of the window had blown in and she had little bits of glass in her. I always remember a milkman came in with 2 small bottles of milk, sat us down on a pile of rocks right in the middle of the same room that we bombed out. Gave 1 bottle to me, 1 bottle to my sister, and says, "You two sit there and shut up. People are dying outside." Our sobs stopped and we started drinking the milk, and I guess we survived. I mean, it sounds funny, but it was actually terrifying for us. I was about 48 years old. I was having terrific headache, and I went to the doctors, and all of a sudden I couldn't type anymore. They did x-rays at the time, and they told me I had a brain tumor. I said, "Oh no, you got the wrong person. There's nothing wrong with me. I just having a headache." Actually, first we thought it was a bruised brain. The reason they thought that is because I had a seizure, which I didn't realize was a seizure. I thought I just fell over. They said it had bruised the brain. They said, "Well, you have to have an operation and we'll take out the tumor." They said, "Well, you can go to Huffy and go anywhere you like. Just pick a doctor and go." Well, I didn't know who to call. So luckily, a friend of mine, their brother, was a neurologist in Boston. When I met this man, his name was Michael Lipton, I knew that he was the man that would I put in charge of my operation or whatever. He just had that confidence. That's what I want. Somebody that can tell me, "I'm going to take care of it." I was petrified of the operation. It wasn't half as bad as I thought it was going to be. I recovered very quickly, so I was extremely lucky. I was 17 years old when I met Ben. I was living with a friend of mine, another girl. We shared an apartment together. We got paid every Friday, and on Thursday night we were broke. We'd pull all our change. We'd empty our purses, our pockets, everything, and see how much change we had together. We'd go out to the cartoon movie house. It used to cost 6pence to get in, so it was really cheap. And coming out of the movie house after it was over, we were laughing about the show. I bumped into Grandma. He was walking along the road with a friend. They started kidding us about and saying, "Hi, what are you doing?" And how guys do with girls. And he ended up taking us home. We could not have boyfriends, in fact. We didn't want them anyway. We didn't even know it. We just stood outside and talked a while. And I agreed that I would write to him if he wrote to me. Not really expecting him to, because he was in uniform. Here he is, a GI, right? I got a letter from him a month later. And in the very first letter, that was one of maybe 400 letters I got from him in the next year. He said, and I still have it, I read it again last night.
Oh.
It said, "Who knows, we may even get married. Can you see yourself married to a GI?" That's what I considered his real proposal, because he never bent down on his knee and proposed or any of that. For some reason I stopped writing, and then one day I was visiting with my mother, and she said, "Do you still write to that nice young man you showed me his letters?" I said, "No, I don't write to him anymore." She said, "Well, you should write to him. He seemed very nice." So I wrote to him, and we started writing again. During this time, I was working and planning on traveling to Canada. Right? He told me that he felt that he couldn't ask me not to go. He didn't ask me not to go, so I went. Didn't realize we were that serious until we were partying and writing all these letters. We really fell in love through the letters, I think. That's how we got to know each other.
That's awesome.
Oh, I get a call from the customs office. The police come down there. They had a package for me, a small box, and then it was an engagement ring. They wanted me to pay $1,000 entry fee on it. Well, I didn't have $1,000, so I said, "I'm sorry, I can't." He said, "Well, we're going to have to send it back to him then." So they sent it back to him. And I told him why I didn't have the money to pay for the customs duty. He was coming home in the next year. I stayed in Canada that year and worked. Then I came down and we got married. He thought he was going to be out of the service when he got home. However, he got home a day earlier than he was supposed to. So they reassigned him. They gave him 30-day leave and they reassigned him. So we thought, oh wow, we better get married in the 30 days. So then I could go with him. So that's exactly what we did. I was 19 at that time. And I had to write to England to my parents to have permission to get married because I was underage. They had to send a letter saying it was okay by them and have it notarized and all that. And I had to give it to the church. We got married on my 20th birthday.
Oh.
We've been married ever since. It's been 63 years this year.
Wow.
Remember, I was going to go around the world to see the world. Ended in Toronto and then in Connecticut. So every time we have a little tiff during our marriage, I'd say, do you know, you stopped me from going around the world. And if you don't behave, I'm going to continue that trip. Is Paul Anka. Has been since I very first saw him. I think he was 15. I was in Canada and the girl I knew from the bank said, oh, there's a great singer coming down to the Coliseum. Why don't we go see him? I'd say, oh, I don't know. I don't have any money. I don't know. Who is it? He told me, Paul Anka. He's really good. He's new and we love him. You're going to love him. Went to see Paul Anka then. I fell in love with him then. How many times have I seen him? I don't know. Probably between 50 and 60. I had seen him every single year that he ever came into Connecticut until he got divorced. And I was disgusted because he was a happily married man. We knew his whole family history with all his daughters and he always bragged about them and how happy they were. It was wonderful. But then I lined up the next year to see him. Head of his fan club told me it was his wife's choice, not his. He was still traveling after all these years, going on tours, and she was tired of waiting home for him. Seen him since and he's still great. I didn't go last year. Went in Florida. Yeah, I saw him in Florida. But I don't go unless I have the front seats. He knows me now. He runs away. No, I think he recognizes I've been at all his shows. I just love his music and I love his life he's done and the way he cares so much about his fans. I think he's an icon and I think he'll be remembered for a long time. I liked Frank Sinatra, of course. Frank didn't write his own music and all that. Paul writes music for everybody. He's really great fan. He's good, but now I'm 81 years old, I can say that he's an icon. I'm not crazy after all those years. Only when I go to see him with my sister, as he's ending his show, he says, well, now we're really going to get down and do we're going to party. I remember when he came to Foxwoods, the man that was guiding people to their seats and everything, he don't want me dancing in the aisles.
Right.
Well, we were dancing in the aisles. And he comes up to us and says, excuse me, ladies, would you please sit down? Paul said we can dance, we're dancing. And we did. And he does respond to his fans. I always write to him before I go to every show and say, I hope you're going to sing my song tonight, Paul. All of a sudden my heart sings. I have 3 boys and 1 girl. And I think that's 4. It used to be in my math class. I have 10 grandchildren. Well, my hopes and dreams for them is that they learn to enjoy each and every day. It was a very different time, so you really can't compare it. They're not thinking of other people as much as they did in those days. Don't sweat the small stuff and take care of the planet Earth. She did it her way. What my mother used to say when I was a child, because I always did everything I wanted to do, Mother used to say, especially eating. I used to eat very fast because I was always going somewhere. You know, you're going to have problems with your stomach in years to come. And I'd say, okay, sirrah, sirrah. It was always my answer. Whatever will be, will be.
Oh, I like that.
And I still believe that. At 81, that.
In 2016, my grandpa suffered multiple strokes within 2 to 3 weeks of each other. The initial effects were loss of mobility, loss of communication, and his short-term memory. Over time, most of his mobility came back, but unfortunately, his ability to communicate more than 2 to 3 words has suffered a loss. Most people don't realize the severity of a stroke not only affects the individual, but their family as well. It's hard to see someone you love go through something so unpredictable, but the beauty of it all is having someone stand by your side within sickness and in health. And that's exactly what my grandma's doing. My grandparents have been married for 63 years. She survived a battle when she was 4 years old, and now she's helping my grandpa fight his daily battle.